Well, good evening and welcome to the Roundup. It is Tuesday, what is it, the seventh day of the session? Something like that. So,
Yeah.
joining me this evening, I have former Representative Mark Jennings. Welcome back, Mark.
Hey, thanks for having us.
And well, I guess I should probably turn this off, huh? There. Now everybody can see. So, joining me tonight, I've got former Representative Mark Jennings and two of our journalists. First time on the show, Sarah Hendricks. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And then, of course, Don Marquardt, which we had a couple camera problems last night. I think we've got that fixed. So, um, everybody on the show, your first time, you get the same treatment. So, why don't you take a few minutes, Sarah, and tell our audience about yourself?
I have been living in Wyoming for 3 years, moved from Washington State, and I have a husband and 3 adult children and 12 grandchildren.
12?
12.
12?
Yes.
Can you name them all?
Cassie, Axel, Titus, Oren. Now you've got me flustered. I'm
You'll
mixing up
remember.
families. Cassie, Axel, Titus, Oren, Lucas, Luna, Hannah, Sophia, and Olivia, and Seamus, Matthias, Jamie, and Danner.
Wow. Okay, so 12 grandchildren, and you live in Crook County, right?
Yep, Sundance.
Okay, and how long you been there?
3 years.
Okay, so Sarah, you probably already read some of the things that she's written. So she wrote a great piece, and it was about your experience moving from Washington to here. It's very well written, and it's been very popular. So real quick, just tell us about your experience moving from, Washington, Liberalville to
The People's Republic of Washington.
yeah, the People's Republic.
That's a very good name. So found out that it was impossible to change the politics in Washington State. It is just liberal is entrenched in every system, and so my husband and I we had enough. He was a gun maker for a while,
In Washington.
and they outlawed buying parts, let alone making them. You can't build a gun. So that was his final straw, and so we started looking, and it took us about 2.5 years to find where we wanted to be, and it was Sundance. And I honestly moved here thinking that it was going to be this beautiful conservative, just heaven. And to find that it wasn't was discouraging. Except that one of the first people that I met was part of Republican Women, and she's like, "Hey, come be a proxy at the state meeting."
Cool.
And there you go.
And here you are.
Yep.
Well, so Sarah's going to be, let's see here. Sarah's going to be doing a couple of interviews for us, and I'm not going to steal her thunder and tell you who it's going to be, but our idea is just kind of some profile type interviews so you can learn more about some of the people that you hear about in the news. So Sarah's going to be doing some in-depth interviews, and we're really looking forward to them. So where we want to begin tonight is today on the Open Range Record, we published what I think was a bombshell. I think it was a very big article. It's been very well read. And to give you the nuts and bolts of it, so we discovered that the only people in this whole check incident that actually violated a rule was Carly Provenza, Representative Carly Provenza, Representative Mike Yen, with the help of the director of the Legislative Service Office. And they just didn't follow the rules with this complaint. They didn't file a complaint. They didn't give Darren McCann a chance to confront his accuser or even a presumption of innocence. And so that's what the entire article was about today. So where we want to begin, and anybody that wants to chime in, just go ahead. But I wanted to start with you, Mark. You were in the legislature for 10 years. And knowing what you know now, the article that we wrote today, why don't you... There we go. Oh, well, just tell him where the house is. Anyway, we're probably going to have another guest, too, by the way. So, Mark, tell me what your impression of today's bombshell report was.
I think it was it was refreshing that we get to see some truth come out amidst all of the hyperbole of where these news people have taken this. They didn't bother to check the truth or the veracity of how that came to be. And certainly it was peculiar to me that Mike Yin has been on Rules Committee for 6 years, I believe.
Yeah, since 2022, actually.
Yeah, and he was there. Steve Harshman did a rewrite. I'm relatively sure that
Some new
was.
rule on the program: everybody silences their phone.
I thought I did silence it.
When you silence that call, anyway.
Yeah.
So Harshman, Mike Yen, they've both been on the Rules Committee for a long time.
They did a rewrite, and if memory serves me correctly, Mike Yen was a part of that rewrite. So he went through all of the rules. House,
Everything.
yes, everything. All of the joint rules. And so there's no way that he can say he wasn't aware of the rules. Representative Provenza is on the Rules Committee now.
Yes, she is.
And all of them voted to approve of these rules at the very beginning of the session.
Yeah, so that's maybe a place that we ought to just pause and just give a little procedure. So in any deliberative body, it doesn't matter if it's the legislature or Congress or if it's your city council. Maybe city councils don't do this, but they should. County commissioners, whatever. The very first thing that happens is you decide on the rules that you're going to operate under, and that happens in the legislature. And usually the big one is at the general session. So when all the new first year people come in, but also during the budget session, they have a span of time where they ask for any rule changes, and that happened. And then the result of that is everybody voted on that. Now, in all fairness, I haven't gone back and looked at the vote total, but my guess is it was pretty unanimous.
In my experience, it almost always is unanimous.
So the long and the short of it is, Carly Provenza, Mike Yen, they're on the Rules Committee. They voted for the rules, and instead of filing a formal complaint following the rules, they just did it. They just lodged the complaint on the floor.
Well, she says it in a newspaper article via your quoted by yours that she very clearly understood what the rule was and thought this was egregious enough, nor did she trust the process. And that's a huge violation on the floor. It's huge.
Well, and I went through the rules with a fine-tooth comb several times, and there's nowhere in there that says if you don't like the speaker or if you don't like the president of the Senate, that you just get to disregard the rules. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that we learned in the rules is there's actually a section that tells you why you follow the rules procedure. And essentially it says so somebody's not vilified in the press. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's essentially what it says. So Mark, you were in the legislature for 10 years. Take us back to around when you first entered the legislature. How do you think that this would have been dealt with then?
Well, I was aware of a number of cases that were handled by this procedure. This rule has been in effect for a long time. Now they may have updated little things. That's why I was a little interested in whether or not they had changed this rule. I can't see that they've changed it in any major way at all. And there are always complaints, ethics charges. It ranges, every year, and it's multiple ones every year. And on the floor, you very seldom got to hear them. Now, on occasion, you would, or even hear about them, because the word confidential is a very important thing there. It's very easy to damage someone's reputation. And if that's your political intent and you don't follow this rule, you can do a lot of harm. And so that's why this rule was in place. And I've had served under 4 different speakers because of Mr. Harshman's went twice. And I'm not aware of any of them not following this procedure and it having been brought up on a floor like this. I've never seen it.
Well, and I've been watching the session for the 6 years of the program, and I've been aware of numerous complaints, and there has never been a single one of them where it was, a motion right on the floor and just calling out another legislator. Now, the interesting part about the article that we wrote is I did an interview with Speaker of the House Chip Nyman this morning. And in it, he says that no, I wasn't contacted. No, I didn't know about this. No, there wasn't a written complaint. No, it wasn't signed. And I think one of the bigger parts of this is that it is obvious that Matt Obrecht helped with this. He had to have.
Sure looks like it to me.
Yeah, and if you look at the statute, and I forget the statute number, it's listed in the article on the Open Range Record, but the statute that says what the duties of the LSO are, it makes it clear that they are they work at the pleasure of the legislature,
They're
not
staff,
the other way around.
Essentially staff, legislative
Service.
office. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, Sarah, you have a kind of an interesting perspective on this. You just recently got to Cheyenne, and so you've been back in Crook County this whole time. So could you tell us what you've seen in the news? I'm sure you've talked to some of the people in Sundance. Just give us your impression of what's been going on with this whole thing.
I don't know anybody who thinks this is a huge deal. Did it look bad? Yes.
Certainly, yeah.
But I don't know anyone who thinks that. Why in the world is the sheriff involved?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're all kind of wondering that.
Yeah. So, that's it. And I mean, personally, I've only been here for 3 years, but from what I've seen and heard, and, because I ask everybody questions all the time. Is this normal? And there's a whole lot of, well, yeah, pretty much. Is that I'm sure those weren't the first checks handed out on the floor.
I'm
it's
sure
just
not.
the first one that was photographed. So.
Yeah, and I think that we could all probably agree that is definitely not a good look. But there's a lot of things that look bad that aren't illegal.
Or rule breaking even.
Yeah, or even breaking of a rule. So, Dawn, did you have any thoughts on it? I mean, you've been watching this whole thing too.
Well, it always bothered me that she didn't go ahead and file something right away Monday night or say something to leadership or even Tuesday morning at the latest. I always thought that was kind of weird, but I always knew that Provenza and Yin, they knew their rules and their procedures because they're always calling stuff out. So for
They're pretty
them not to
proficient.
do it kind of put in the back of my mind that something was up.
Yeah.
And Yin actually is minority floor leader. So he would be involved almost doubly because any complaint would have to be taken to him also.
Yes, and so the procedure listed in the joint rules actually says that the Speaker of the House has to consult both the majority floor leader and the minority floor leader. The majority floor leader is Representative Scott Heiner, and interestingly enough, the minority floor leader is Representative Mike Yin. So I don't know how that would have worked, but it doesn't matter because they didn't follow the procedure anyway. So, Mark, one more question for you on this whole matter, and then we'll move on because I think we're all tired of talking about the check incident. Had this whole thing transpired the way that it did, bombshell report, what would have happened 10 years ago? Do you think?
I don't know 10 years ago if you'd have rolled this back very much further because you're impugning the integrity of the bar, the people's house. And for me, that's very critical that we preserve the integrity of that body. Years ago, one of the things that's listed in the punishment there is removal.
Yes.
And it requires a 2/3 vote. I don't know that they'll ask for that. I don't know that I would recommend that. 10 years ago, it would have been handled harshly. I've seen a number, you mentioned that you hadn't seen too many people get up, and I have seen people begin to cross a line. It gets 1 o'clock in the
Then get
morning,
gavelled down.
and they get gavelled down. We are not going to impugn. And it was a different time frame in decorum. You weren't allowed to speak another person's name. You were, or pronouns, or you were. It was, decorum was a little different. It would have been called down right out of the gate, under at least.
Probably any of them,
Yeah,
I would think.
I would think so too. And,
I watched Speaker Barlow gavel numerous people down. I mean, they
Yeah.
would get out a hand, and he was right on it. Well, I shouldn't say that all the time because he let a certain legislator, I won't mention Lloyd Larson's name, swear on the floor. And he didn't do anything about it, but he did admonish then Representative Nyman, well, I guess he still is Representative
Yeah.
Nyman, but Chip said the word crap on the
Yeah.
floor, and he got admonished for that. So I think even Barlow or Harshman,
Are you sure it was crap? Or I kind of thought it was bull crap.
it may have been.
Just
Well,
for,
that's what the
just
whole
for
thing
our
was.
listeners, clarity.
But even Albert Summers,
Yeah.
he ran a pretty tight ship too.
Yeah,
I mean, we could say what we want about Speaker Summers, and I've said a lot, but I think he still ran a pretty tight ship during
Yeah.
the session.
yeah. I think that in the past you'd have seen some immediate disciplinary there in the from the chair, and I think Speaker Nyman perhaps is not as experienced of having seen that and was taken aback by it.
Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah,
I mean, that thing came out of left field, and I don't know how he would have known. Well, he didn't know
He
that it
didn't
was going to
know.
happen, so he was completely caught off guard.
and he did not receive good advice from LSO.
Well, no, because they were behind it.
They were complicit, is what it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. We can't say for a fact, but man, all evidence points to it. All right, so I think we're all pretty tired of talking about the check thing. So let's move on. And I didn't see this happen in the session. I was working on getting the story out. But Dawn, you saw Chip kind of gavel some folks down, and that there is a change in the investigative committee. So if you could tell us what this is all about.
So they got up and they were talking about what was going to happen with the committee. And basically, the committee's going to go on pause because there's the sheriff's investigating the bribery situation. So they're going to pause that because they think that the sheriff needs to investigate that first before they make a decision, which to me doesn't make any sense. But nonetheless, when they started talking about the big, beautiful amendment of Yin's on the budget.
What was that?
It was HB 1.
No, what was the amendment?
Oh, it was the HB 1 amendment number
Governor's-
1.
Was it the
The
governor's recs?
yeah, to go back to the governor's original budget. And so there was a lot of back and forth on that. And when Yin got back up to talk about it, he kind of was getting a little pointed at people.
Okay.
And Chip kind of told him he needed to knock it off, which I was pretty proud of Chip for doing that. So,
Well, yeah, there's an article about it in the Cowboy State Daily, and it says that Representative Yin that the Appropriations Committee was just stabbing everything that
Right.
they didn't like, and Speaker Nyman said nobody is stabbing anybody, and we're going to tighten things up. So that happened. What was the response on the floor?
I think after that, everybody kind of simmered down, but there was some back and forth with some of the women that are in the house. Were kind of angry today, and they were kind of angry yesterday too. So I don't know what's going on with that.
Okay.
So it was like lolly and
Well, and I think what you're seeing is that and this often happens in the legislature, that when one side or the other gets continually voted down, when they keep losing their amendments, losing votes, it tends to make them a little bit irritated. And I mean, especially when the session kind of drags on, which I don't know if I was told that they were going to have a late session tonight, so I don't even know if they're still
There.
They're still going on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's kind of move on a little bit. Another big thing that happened, and I want to start with you, Sarah, is the governor signed an executive order that he's banning all campaign contributions on state property. So first, I think you've got an interesting perspective on this. But before we started the show, we were kind of talking about this. So just give me your 2 cents on what you think about this.
My 2 cents is those were not the first checks passed out on the floor. It was just the first time it was photographed.
Right.
And I think that, one side is jumping on the other side with anything they can get. And it's just kind of blown out of proportion.
Well, and I think you're right about that. But there's some question as to whether or not the governor can actually ban campaign contributions. I made the crack when I first saw this. Why didn't the governor just say he's banning free speech?
Yeah. Well, he did.
Yeah, because there's this little court case called Citizens United
Yeah.
that I don't think the executive can ban campaign contributions. Also, there's a question of if he can ban it at all in the Capitol building. Talk to me about that, Don.
Well, I think that, so in the article, it said that he's not in control of the floor of the House or the Senate or the LSO offices, anything associated with that area. So basically, with him saying that, there's only so many areas he can control anyway. So until the Senate and the House come up with a rule for that, it's still.
Well, I wanted to sidebar a little bit with that. All legislature actually gave the governor the right to somewhat be in control of the Capitol. Until that time, the legislature was in control of it, including the governor's quarters. And so that changed probably 4 or 5 years ago, telling citizens who maybe drove all the way across the state on bad roads, and they want to express, hey, I like how you vote. I'm going to run for re-election. Here's $50 to override that First Amendment right.
I don't think he does.
And it's the people's house. I think maybe the operative word there is the people. It's the people's house.
Yes. Now, I think we can probably all agree that maybe those donations shouldn't take place on the floor, but certainly I don't think that he can ban them from the Capitol building.
I would argue that even and I was there for 10 years, and I don't know that I've ever seen it, but I would be with you ladies that absolutely it probably has happened before. I have no question about that.
Don?
So then I got to.
It's a good question.
Was there anybody associated with that in his office? So, it kind of goes both ways.
Well, what about
I
the
see a
100?
FOIA coming somewhere.
Well, maybe I should do that, shouldn't I? Yeah.
What about the 150? Question for me on this is, where is the line? I mean, if there is a line to be drawn, I mean, the governor thinks that he can ban it, across the entire Capitol complex and the campus. I think he called it the Capitol complex. But if he thinks he can do that, okay, well, where is the line? Is it in the parking lot? Is it across the street? Is it, can you give somebody a campaign donation on the steps of the Supreme Court? I mean, where is the line? And here's the problem with investigations, motions like this, that they have tentacles that go everywhere.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, the media has drawn it out to such a point where I don't think any of us know where that line is.
Looks to me like it's looking for a good court case.
Don?
So I've been reading a lot on social media posts on some of these articles, and people were like, hey, at least it was done in basically the daylight, and you could see the transparency there. Mm-hmm. What about with all the lobbyists, and all the other stuff that goes on? You don't see that. You don't see the dark money. And that's going to start coming out too, the dark money.
Well, and here's another one too. So last session, Senate leadership held a fundraiser at the Met downtown, in which they invited pretty much predominantly lobbyists.
Yeah.
So how is that any different than this? Now, one point here, and this is why I wanted to bring this up, because I think it's interesting, and Mark, you kind of alluded to it, that the governor is not in control of the whole Capitol building.
No.
And I spent some time with the Christy Racinas, the state auditor, today, and we were talking about this, and she said, well, look, the legislature is in control of the House chamber and the Senate chamber. She said, and it's different if the legislature is in session or not. If the legislature is not in session, then the governor is in control of all of the common areas, right?
That was
That's what I was
changed a
told.
few years back, yes, and that is true. They gave up that. It used to be that I believe the legislature, the House more specifically, but both chambers, they footed the bills and they left money to be taken care of the people's house while they were not in session, and eventually they turned that. I think I voted against it, allowing the governor, the executive branch, to.
Did we go through this whole thing and there's not a sound? What the heck? There is two sound. Well, there has to be. Hold on just a moment. Yeah, there absolutely is sound. Not muted. Yeah, so there has to be sound. Zoom P8, okay, yeah. Huh. Yeah, so we've got sound. So let's keep going.
The constitutional prerogative there is that the House holds the purse strings. So even though they basically signed that over to the governor, they could bring it back, and in my opinion should. And the governor issuing an edict against the First Amendment of the people in the people's house.
That was astonishing to me.
Yeah.
That he actually signed an executive order. So yeah, I've just got notes that there is sound. The Master Chief, thank you, Master Chief, for telling us that there's sound.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, the interesting thing about this is that the governor only has control of part of the Capitol complex, and not all of it. And one of the reasons we know this is the Great Gun Debate. Everybody
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, where it was the building commission and Chuck Gray and the governor went back and forth about having guns in the Capitol building, even though he had just passed a law. All right, so lots of that. All right, so let's move on. We kind of mentioned this before, but I want to talk about Yin's amendment because a similar one passed in the Senate today, and that was to go back to the governor's budget. And ladies, we'll start with you because you guys watched Yin's amendment, or at least Don did on the floor. And then let's just talk about it because there's a lot of discussions surrounding the budget that the governor, man, that guy, drunken sailors are more
Responsible.
More responsible than he is. So what? Tell us, go into depth about the governor's amendment, or the
Well,
Yin's amendment, rather.
He just basically wanted to go back to the governor's original budget so they could speed things up, is what I got out of
Speed
it.
things up. I
Yeah.
love it.
And their whole thing was that by time everything gets passed and goes back to the Senate, then they're going to start doing all these amendments. Well, you kind of know with what went on last year during the supplemental budget, nothing happened, and Beitman just kind of tossed the whole thing out. So then they were trying to put budget bills on them other bills and attaching to get that money moved that way. So anyways, I think a lot of the back and forth was about the work that the Joint Appropriations Committee has done since they, in the interim and everything, and that a lot of people wanted to hear what they had decided and to go on with that because they think that there needed to be some cuts, and the people that have been speaking out, and I guess there's been a lot more people watching those interim committees
Absolutely.
and stuff, and they want cuts in the budget. People want these legislators to be responsible for the taxpayers' money.
It's their job.
Yep, and that's kind of what I got out of it, but there was a lot of back and forth about it. So,
And I think I want to point out on that last year when the conversation was had that they did not pass a supplemental budget. Listen, what that did, my understanding from people who worked around appropriations on that, was that what that did was it kicked approximately $400 million back to the executive to basically have the capability to spend as he chose.
a slush fund.
A slush fund of $400 million of the taxpayers' money, all because the Senate leadership chose not to do their job, which is to confer and to hammer those things out. In a supplemental budget, that is bad enough, but in a regular budget year, which is constitutionally mandated, I have never seen that suggestion come. Let's just go with the governor's recs. I've never seen that. And it's interesting coming from Yin, because Yin is the one who, with this complaint the other day, wished to slow things down so 80 bills died.
Yes.
So now he's wanting to speed things up before crossover even happens. And so the people that I talk to say that the Senate appropriations is not really up to speed or not wanting to do the work.
Well, you know what it feels like to the regular person is they're just lazy and they don't
Yeah.
want to do the work.
Yeah.
And they just want to spend our money.
Well, so another part of that, and I had more of a bird's eye view into the budget just because Agent 29, Representative Pendergraft, is my producer, and so we got to talk about this a lot. But it was very, and he didn't really say anything negative about the Senate, but it was very clear that the members of the House Appropriations Committee were very much aware of what was happening in the budget. They were working very hard on their different amendments, cuts, whatever. And from my perspective, yes, I want the budget to be cut. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that whether you agree with the budget cuts that were made or not, it was still the members of the House that were really running most of the Joint Appropriations Committee meetings. And I think if you watched any of those, you could probably get that. I mean, they were the ones making the motions.
As a legislator, in 10 years, I think I voted yes on one budget because there were cuts. I find Representative Yin's behavior very disgusting. In those years that I didn't vote, I still didn't say, hey, let's not do anything. We ran amendments to try and make it better, to make it to a point where we could vote for it. Very seldom successfully.
Right.
But to disrespect the joint appropriations process and to say, hey, let's just throw this away because we don't like the cuts. No, that's kind of bad news there, that you treat your fellow legislators like that.
I think so. And if we go back to the supplemental budget, and let's just be fair about this, I think there's something to be said for an argument to be made that maybe we don't need a supplemental budget. I don't happen to agree with that. I'm just saying let's be fair about it. The same argument was made. The Senate rejected the supplemental budget coming from the House without even having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the way that it happened.
Yes.
It went from the House, and all of a sudden, we can't talk to these people. And that it feels very, very reminiscent of last year.
I think people are fed up with the supplemental budget. You ladies can tell me if you hear the same thing. The supplemental budget was designed for emergencies.
Right.
Yes,
It-
things
it
you
was-
don't know about.
Yeah. And so it has become a smaller budget. And not real small. But I think people, they expect cuts. The conservatives have come to power and they expect cuts. And at the very least, they expect them to do their work. I mean, that's what they elected them for.
Yes.
And so to hear that kind of talk, leadership out of the Senate to even let that kind of talk be had out there is very wrong. It's
It's
very
disappointing.
disrespectful.
Very disappointing.
It's disrespectful of the people.
Yes. All right. So, Don, in just a second, I'm going to ask you to trade seats with another guest, but I wanted to let you have the final word on this budget business, and then we're going to move to more of a county-centric discussion. But go ahead and tell us what you think of the budget.
I just think that a lot of these amendments in the cuts, people need to hear what's going on. They need to let their legislator know what they think and advise them of what they want. You know, it's very important that people get involved, and I just really don't want to see what happened last year with the Senate, with the supplemental budget. And I think that Bo Beitman's got a lot riding on this, and he better start playing ball with the taxpayers.
I couldn't agree more. All right, Don, thank you for joining us
You're
tonight. I'm
welcome.
going to ask you to switch seats with our next guest. And so this is one of the bills that Representative Chip Nyman was carrying was essentially a tax bill. And it would prevent a local school board from creating a recreation district and forcing you to pay taxes on it. And we're joined tonight by the chairman of the Crook County Republican Party, Mark Kep. And Mark, you probably have to scoot a little bit closer so we can get the mic in there. You don't have to lean into it; it'll pick you up. But so first, why don't you tell us about yourself, and then we'll talk about the bill.
Yeah, well, great. Thanks for having me, David. Name's Mark Kep. We for 13 years, my wife and I were full-time RVers. Lived on the road, traveled the country, and COVID changed that. We were in Arizona when the COVID stuff happened, and we ended up back in California at a family house, and saw really fast how the government can turn against the people, really fast. They were closing hiking trails with $10,000 fines.
Wow.
And literally, it's signs. I stole one of the signs. I have it. $10,000 fine for going on this trail. One of the signs I ripped off and went on the trail. Right. So we sold the RV and we moved to where it was normal, we thought. We have a home in Sundance, Wyoming. We love it. Beautiful area. And have gotten involved because the reality is what the COVID period showed me personally is if you're not involved, you're just part of you're going to be guided by the people who are involved. And it was time to get involved and speak up. And so I have.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate you joining the program. And what you're going to find, and as you can see, this is kind of a fly by the seat of our pants type of program. But there's a lot of things that happen in Cheyenne after the session is over for the night. There are different meetings that happen. Sarah is here for the Republican Women meeting. And so you are going to see a lot of people come and go, and that's going to be a normal thing with this program. So, yeah, it's kind of on purpose. So Mark, we've got this bill. Representative Chip Nyman is running it. Sarah, you alluded to this earlier. And it would stop a school board from creating a recreation district all on their own. First, tell us about the bill, and then you've got, and I don't know how deep you want to go into this, but you've got some specific knowledge about this process. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about what's going on?
Yeah, well, we have to actually go back in time about 25, 30 years ago. The legislature.
We don't have a long enough program for that.
Yeah, well, we're not going to go every year, but just to give a baseline, actually, all but 2 counties have recreation districts already. And most of those districts are formed either by a school district forming it or jointly between a school district and the commissioners. And so most counties have a recreation district already. Most people don't know they exist. Those districts are allowed to charge a tax. You know, one mill if it's a school district, any mill they want if they're a county commissioner formed board. It's in the statute.
No, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So taxes, at least as far as I know, have to be voted on. I'm like every tax I've ever heard of, you cannot tax people without, and this is, Mark, you and I could probably go on for hours about fees. Those are taxes. But,
Yeah.
an actual levied tax has to be voted on. Is that what's happening with these things?
No, it's so statute is 189201 and 189202. They can form a recreation district, they can do it, and then they can institute a tax. They don't need to go to the voters to do it, and it's there. And so this bill that Representative Nyman has brought would force those recreation districts to every 4 years go back to the voters and get approval for the mill that they've instituted. And it's a really simple bill. It just amends that 189. I think it's 201 or no, it's 18202, the section for the taxes, the mill levy. It amends it to add that you have to go to a vote of the people at least every 4 years to maintain that.
Well, I think there's a larger point to talk about here, because school districts, we fund them to a higher level than just about every state. We're like number 2 or number 3 on the list. Last year, that number was, I believe it was $21,700 per student.
I think it's 22 plus this year.
Yeah, I don't know what it is this year, but I'm sure it goes up. 200 million every year is what what the escalator is.
Somewhere in that.
That's a topic for another program.
Yeah.
But we already fund schools to a ridiculous amount. And now lots of school districts are setting up their own recreation district to get more funding. Let you weigh in, Mark, and then we'll go back to the other Mark.
Well, I think that was put in the legislature maybe before I even got in 2014. Did you know what year?
It was in the 90s.
It was in the 90s. Yeah, that
So
was
way
a
back
long
then.
time.
Yeah.
And so they gave that option, but I don't know how much it was used around the state, and I don't really even know. The legislature, certainly the House bills that have to do with taxes have to come off of that side. Seems like very poor thinking back in the 1990s.
Well, in the there was a gentleman who gave public comment during the session today, and he was apparently one of the individuals who helped create that. Wasserman or
Wasserberger.
Wasserberger, my pal.
Okay, never mind. We don't need to go any farther. We can understand that one.
All right. Yeah, he explained it. Basically, his explanation, and I will summarize. You can go watch the YouTube video. He basically said we wanted to figure out another way to give the schools money.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, is the recreation district. And so, in a lot of communities, it provides value. In our county, Crook County, they're allowed to levy a 1 mil levy. That is equal to $283,000.
It adds up quick.
Yeah, but I mean, what can you do with $283,000 in a county? Not that much. Campbell County, I think it's $3 million.
Yeah.
They build a pool. They do all this stuff. In Crook, though, when our school district went to do it, they had a room full of 70 citizens. Somebody brought in a petition signed by another 100, all of them saying, we don't want this. And the chairman looked at the group and basically said, well, we don't know what we're going to do with the money yet, but the statute allows us to do this, and we're going to do it. And they voted to ram that through and institute this tax. And so that's where this comes from. And one of the things that was during the public comment that was, I don't know, it wasn't troubling, but there was an individual who testified who was from Pinedale. And she was in quite a nice home when she was testifying. And she didn't work for the state. She worked for a not-for-profit. And that not-for-profit gets their funding off the recreation mill. And they were saying they do great work, which I don't know. I'm sure you do. If it's so wonderful, I'm sure that people will continue to give you the money for votes. So this is all the little stuff that's going on within the state that just goes under the radar, and it all starts adding up. Stop taking money from the people and using it any way you want. Get permission from the folks to use it right.
It's called legalized plunder.
Calvin Coolidge called it legalized larceny.
Yeah.
Now, Sarah, you were also in the committee meeting. So I want to get your thoughts on, the bill, how the committee meeting went, and just give us your thoughts on it.
Honestly, once people got up, we had Mark and another person from our county got up and gave comments, and but the majority of the comments were people saying, but what we're doing is really good. And we need your money. Don't take the money away. And my thought was, I was this close, I was on the edge of my seat to get up at the end. The chairman gives anybody else, but he prefaced it by saying, okay, we're running late, anybody else? And so all of us just kind of, okay, we're just going to sit back and see how it plays out. But my thoughts on that are, you don't have the right to our money, but every single person, including our own school board, who was in favor of this project, they believe that they absolutely do. And it blows my mind to see that so prevalently in a red state. And I started hearing people comment on Wyoming just in the last 12 months that it is the bluest red state in the nation. And I can totally see how we got that nickname.
Well, okay, so the way I always phrase this is that it is the legislature that is purple verging on blue. But if you go out to Sundance, Wyoming, or pretty much any town, even Sheridan. Sheridan's got a lot of Democrats in it, but they're nowhere near even close to even 50%. I think it's like 20% maybe Democrats. Now, that's not to say that all the Republicans are conservatives, but I think by and large, if you go to any town in Wyoming, maybe not the major, more metropolitan areas, but places like Sundance and Hewlett and Buffalo, well, that's Hazard County. We don't know what happens there. But Thermopolis, Powell, Cody, all these other little towns, you'll run into a predominantly conservative type of folk. Now,
And certainly the rural people will be
Oh, yeah.
predominantly.
Well, and I'll say, like my neighbor, he's lived in the county for 35 years. He used to work in the coal plant. He's not politically active. He despises politics, but he's actually my sounding board. I'm thinking something, and I'll run by him. Hey, what do you think? And he'll immediately hit it, and he's right on the nose. And so, like the conversation earlier about the check gate, he hit it right on the nose right away. He's like, "This is clearly a political stunt. It didn't look good, but they didn't do anything wrong." And so he's my sounding board because he's been around long enough where usually his gut is right on the money.
right on. Okay, so Mark, I don't want you to go away because we're going to go back to you in just a little bit. But we have one more topic, and Sarah, you're going to get put on the hot seat for this one. So quite a while ago, maybe a month or so, I interviewed Superintendent of Public Instruction, Megan Degenfelder. And the reason I'm including this in a news program is I think it's news to just compare the two. Because in my interview, she was very cordial, and I think quality-wise, it was a kind of a good interview. But she didn't really answer a lot of questions with me. And from the very beginning, I asked her, hey, you say this word conservative all the time. What does this word mean? And it was sort of a circuitous answer. So,
It is an election year, I might remind you.
Yes, it is an election year. This is true. So, Superintendent Degenfelder was at a luncheon for the Republican women today, and Sarah was there. And so, Sarah, I'd like you to just talk to us about that. What did you learn? Did you learn anything? Did you ask her any questions? Talk to us about it.
So she was more forthcoming than I have seen in the past. She did answer a lot of questions, and of course, most of it, every question for the first, half of the meeting was education related.
Okay,
And
as you
so,
would expect.
yes, I was kind of surprised that it went on so long before they started saying, if you become president, governor, sorry, president.
Well, maybe that's
It's
the
an
next
election
one.
year.
Who knows?
Maybe it is. Maybe it's a stepping stone. But she addressed, the students protesting, the anti-ICE
Yeah.
protests. And I wasn't super happy with her answer at first. And then she explained how very little power the superintendent of instruction has in this state. And, I come from a different state where that superintendent, man, he is the king. And whatever he says, everyone has to follow. And so this is a whole different dynamic here. The question that I asked her was kind of a follow-up because we had transitioned into, if you become governor, not president,
If you become emperor, no. Just
right?
kidding.
What can you do? Somebody said, would you have more power in cracking down on schools and what they're allowing and things like that? Because the individual schools or the school boards are the ones who pick curriculum, not her. And she can't really do anything but say, hey, let's do something about these kids walking out of school, but they don't have to listen to her. And so someone asked, would you have more power to change things? And she says, oh, absolutely. And the first thing would be getting rid of some of these boards, that we have way too many boards in this state. And we're being ruled by unelected bureaucrats. And so my follow-up question to that was, you say you could get rid of the boards, but can you really? Because we're watching President Trump say, I can do this and this and this, and then everybody's in court, and do they have the authority to sue you to keep their power? And I wasn't super thrilled with her answer because it was basically, they probably won't do it. But it was kind of, to my mind, it was left open that she can try.
Most of those boards are created by the legislature.
Exactly.
And so she does not have the power to do that. And the legislature could defund some of them and could dissolve some of them. It's one of my favorite things is repealers.
Getting rid of laws.
Every time we pass a law, we take a little piece of freedom. Not every single law, but by and large, so I would question how much she can actually.
Okay, so we've pretty much talked about that. I mean, I don't know that there's too much more to say, except that, maybe we got more answers than we did previously. But here's my thinking. If you're running for governor, well, any of the top 5 elected offices, you should be able to answer tough questions, and you should stand for criticism. And I really get kind of irritated a lot irritated when we just select a candidate and that's who it is, and we're all going for them, and how dare you ask any questions? So on this show, we're not going to do that, and we certainly don't do that on the Open Range Record. So, Mark, I want to go back to you we've only got a few minutes left, but you're the county chairman in Crook County, and I want you to talk to us about your county caucus and about the county convention, and just talk to us about what those plans are, what you've got in mind, how it's going to happen, when, all that stuff. So go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, so we had our county caucus on Saturday, and our convention is on March 14th, another Saturday in Sundance, Wyoming, in the courthouse basement. We have a really engaged central committee in Crook County, very conservative, and so we've got a lot of good resolutions that we're going to be debating on and hopefully taking to the state level. And anytime you do any of these processes, most people, it's their first time, and they don't know how to do it, and they don't know the process. And so I think we did a good job of bringing a lot of people up to speed really fast. How do you structure a resolution? What's the purpose of it? Why do we do this? Why is this grassroots? And that's what it is. That's what's great about the Republican Party, is that it is grassroots. And we have platform planks that make sense. They hit your soul. You believe in them, and that's what you're there to stand by and support, and the resolutions you can put out there. And so, March 14th, we'll have our convention, and then we'll be on to the state convention, and looking forward to it.
So one of the important things that and a lot of people, when you say county caucus or county convention, it's kind of one of those, do we really have to go? Okay, well, usually those are the same people that whine about how the party operates. Well, at the county caucus and the county convention, this is your chance to change if there's something that you don't like, how the Republican Party works in your county, well, this is your chance to change it. You can suggest platform changes or bylaws, or there's any number of committees that you'll sit on. And, I've never been one of those that appreciates just complaining, right? If you're going to complain about something, you should go do something about it, which, you start a podcast or a big media platform or whatever, but just go do something. So I'm glad that we have you on, and I want to say thank you to all our guests tonight.
I think their county also produces cookies.
They do.
And so
I'm going.
Yeah.
Mark, we are not going to our county caucus. We're going to Crook
They
County.
have great chocolate chip cookies. Great.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to all our guests tonight. Of course, Dawn Marcourt, one of our journalists, gave up her seat, but thank you, Dawn. Mark Kep from Crook County, one of our great journalists, another one of our great journalists, Sarah Hendricks. And of course, Mark, thank you for joining us and giving us your perspective.
Always a pleasure.
So that'll do it for tonight's broadcast. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Roundup. Thank you for watching. And I want to hear your feedback. If you like the content, if you like the guests that we're having, just let me know. Or if you think I'm off my rocker, go ahead and send us that comment too. But for now, have a good evening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.